So in this tutorial today, we're going to look at the camera raw filter. So I'm going to take you through exactly how I process my images. So the first thing I will do, I will go into opening an image. So I'll go File, Open, okay, and I've literally just this second taken my Power of Touch photo for today. And I've had a little look, and I've just located it here. Okay, and I think we were going to go with this one. So I'm going to open, like so. Okay, so there's my image of the day. Now I look at that, and the colours are a bit weird, they're kind of slightly blurry as well. So the first thing I do is I go straight into Filter, and I go to Camera Raw Filter, and I tend to click on this, which shows the cycle between the before and after views, so you can then see how it looked originally and how it looks now. So generally I don't really alter the temperature, but on this occasion I do feel it needs to change slightly because it just doesn't feel like it's the right complexion for my daughter. So it is a bit blue. Well, the picture's a bit blue, and I think it's because it's a bit grey outside. So I'm using the lights in the house, so that's going to give off a slightly strange colour balance as well. So you've got different temperature hues here, but I'm going to keep that on 0, so you can change that. I'm just going to put 0 here. Now, if we look here, you've got various settings that you can change. So you can put it on auto, which to be fair looks quite good, but I personally like to decide how I want my images to look. So we can have a look. So it said 47 there. Let's change it back. I think I wouldn't want to go too far. One thing we need to be careful of is if we go too far here, if you see here, I'm reading here, and then if I look up here and read the RGB, you never want it to be anything higher than 255, because if I take it up to 255 here, means there's no pixels there, no detail at all. So that's one thing you need to always be wary of. So I'm going to take that up to maybe 30, but I'm going to hover, and I can see there's still exposure there. I think it could potentially go a little bit lighter, like so. Now you can increase your contrast to reduce it. I'm going to increase it just slightly, like so. Now, next is the highlights. So you can make your highlights lighter, but look here, now it is beginning to kind of blow out a little bit, so you're losing the detail. So very often I do pull the highlights back, but that's okay. Now if you've got shadow areas and you want to make them more dramatic, you see here it's doing the minus, so it means it's making it darker. You see here around my daughter's face, it's almost filled like black solid shape. Well, you can lift it and lighten the shadow areas. So I might just lighten it a little bit, like so. I don't tend to alter the whites or the blacks. You can if you want, but I don't tend to alter those at all. So I've done that to start with, and then you've also got texture. Now for me, this series of images is about the power of touch. So the texture of the skin is really important to me. So I make sure that, let's just zoom back there. So I do include a bit of texture there. And then you can include the clarity. Now you can see here the difference, what it's doing to the images. Can you see that? It's much more gritty there, and to me it looks way too over processed. I mean, you can go all the way there, and it just I think it just makes the images look very harsh. It depends. There's a lot of photographers that do like to up the clarity, and it's quite obvious when they have done that, because it just means everything's much more gritty. You can also change the dehaze, so you can make things a bit softer or more contrasty, but you can see it's starting to play with the colours here as well, so that's, I wouldn't really alter the dehaze. Your vibrance, this is to do with the vibrance of the colours, so you can increase it slightly if you wish, so maybe slightly. Saturation, that will make things a lot brighter as well, and you've got to be careful not to go too far, or you go the opposite way. And let's just minimise that, and that's taking the colour out, and slowly desaturation or gradually increasing the saturation. I think I'm going to leave that there. I'm looking at that. I think maybe we could just notch that a little bit there, and maybe just bring a little bit more highlight detail there. And so that's the before and after generally. So I don't do an awful lot to the pictures. I try to keep them as true to how I took the pictures. But you've got the tonal curve. You can change things here as well. Let's go here, sorry. You can change it like so. You can change the highlights, the lights, the darks, etc. You can see the curve bend in there as I'm doing that. Okay, so this is like a histogram, so that's just showing the shadow areas and the highlights. So again, shadows here, if you want to lift them, you may want to increase them. Okay, but for now I'm going to just leave it as I've got it. Here is your sharpening. Now you can do it this way if you wish. Let's zoom in a bit closer and we can see the difference. So it's a little bit sharper. I tend to do mine in the Photoshop, so I'm going to just leave that as it is. You can change the colours slightly in your pictures as well here. So you may want to increase, let's zoom out so we can see what we're doing a bit more, but you may want to enhance the reds there. You can see my daughter's cheeks getting quite red or going quite cyan. Remember the opposites of the colours. So red is cyan, so if I start to put more orange in, I take more of the orange out, it starts to get a bit bluey as well. And you've got the yellow here, and then you're decreasing it. So these are just other things that you can sort of experiment with, and the sort of split toning, can combine different colours together in your pictures. Like so, I want to have a bit more of a yellow, so you can just leave that, or take it back to 0. Lens correction is quite good if you've photographed architecture. Now obviously I wouldn't recommend doing it if you photographed a person, but you can see you can distort your pictures, you can balloon it as you wish, but that's a good way of squaring up any architecture that you photograph that doesn't look quite right. You can add grain if you want to your pictures as well. Let's have a look. Yeah, can you see that sort of grain? It's got much more rougher. So if you want to give it that oldie worldy, and here you've got this sort of veneering effect around the picture as well, so you can get that kind of effect. But again, I'm just going to take those back to 0. And you've got calibration there as well, and presets if you want to set those, but generally I do most of my editing here. Okay, you can change if there's an issue with redeye, so this can remove any redeye in your pictures. You can use this to transform your image as well, just as you would in Photoshop, and then you can take selections here for colour samples as well. But generally that's where I do most of the images there, and I'll click off that, and that takes me back to this. Another useful thing here is you can see my settings. So I was at ISO 400, shot it at 2.2, that's why it's lovely shallow depth of field, and then it's at 80th of a second. So I wonder if I should just maybe increase a little bit more yellow there, where it's a little bit cool, and then we can OK that. Now I would recommend that you take a screenshot showing the before and after together. So I've got my image there. I then go into the Sharpen Unmask tool just here, and I tend to do it about 60%. I never go beyond that really. Got a nice shallow depth of field. If we're still a little bit, am I totally convinced by the colours? It's a tricky one, because if you start playing too much, then it all does start to look a bit weird. So, but you can, if you want to change them slightly, you can obviously increase the yellow a little bit. Now I'm currently in the mid-tones. You've got your preview, you can see the before and after. So maybe I just bring that down a little bit. We've got the shadows here, if you want to add a bit of red. Oh, let's make sure you've got your preview. You can see they add in the red, add in the blue. I'm going to take that because that's fairly neutral. The highlights is where we could possibly add a little bit of yellow, and maybe, yeah, maybe that's what it needed. Look, we see the difference. So I've just taken a bit of the green out by adding the magenta, but you've got to be careful. You don't want to go too far, but you just want to add a little bit there. See, I think that's, so a lot of it's just trial and error. You just sort of try these things out, you look at that, bit cool, added a bit more yellow, added a bit of magenta to take the green out, and I think that's fine. You could add a bit more red in if I want to, maybe a little tiny bit. And there we have it. And then when I'm happy with the image, and I think that looks fine to me, obviously you can crop your pictures. So, you know, I may decide I want to just crop it slightly here, maybe like that. So I've tried to keep it constrained. Yeah, so now the eye is a bit more focused here, and I've kept it nice and simple. And then I will go File, Save As, and this is Power of Touch, and I think this is 50. So I always change the name. Now look, at the moment this is where my SD card is, so I need to make sure I save it on my desktop. So there we go, I'm going to save that there. I'm making sure the JPEG is selected, and remember, you know, sometimes your laptop will set it there. Make sure you always take it to the maximum quality of 12, and then you can OK that. Now, as you well know, I like to share my images on social media, so to protect it, I'm going to change my my resolution to 150. Now that means that picture is going to look perfectly fine on the screen, but the image is protected, and also the image size is much smaller. So 64.9 megabytes it was originally, now it's 16, and I'm going to OK that, and you'll see it's a bit smaller. And then I go File, Save As, and I do this, I put 150, and then I know that's the digital file that I'm going to upload onto Instagram and Facebook and my website, and now that's 3.2. So that is how we use Camera Raw. Thank you.